Hey folks, welcome back. Today we're talking about parenting coordinators, the secret weapon for high conflict co-parenting. I love this topic, and there are so many of you who may not even know about this specialist, this expert who is so valuable both during the divorce and post-divorce. And with me today is a new friend of mine, Carolyn Kalos. And she is a seasoned family lawyer, mediator, and parenting coordinator with over 25 years experience in family law. I'm going to let you read all about Carolyn in the show notes so that we can dive right in. But I would say grab a pen and paper. She's going to share a lot about what is a parenting coordinator? What do they do? When are they needed? What's the value and benefit of working with them? And so this is going to be really big for any of you who are really concerned about, especially if you have young kids, as I did, and you've got years of co-parenting ahead of you with someone that you're having a hard time communicating with. This is for you. Welcome, Carolyn.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited about today's conversation. Carolyn, I love my guests to share something that they're proud of, share a little piece of yourself that may not have a whole lot to do with what you do for a living.
Yeah, you did give me a heads up, but I think I would like to share two things, a personal and a professional, if I can do that. I'm most proud personally of my children. I have twins who are 15 and a half, and I'm extremely proud of who they are. And professionally, I'm really proud. 4.5 years ago, I left a job that I had been doing for about 25 years, and I did not know what I was going to do with my life. It was in the middle of the pandemic, July 1st, 2020. And I created a whole new career for myself, culminating in my current job, where I'm at a firm that's grown from 3 of us till just recently we are newly anointed Diamond Fee, Kalos, and Ballard. We got a new partner. We have an associate, and I have a thriving, busy practice. So I'm really proud of building a solo practice and then joining a firm that I'm really thrilled to be a part of.
Beautiful. Well, congratulations. Kudos on that.
Thank you.
And 15 is a tough age. So for you to be really proud of and having twins at the same age, right? Right. So
Yeah,
having twins, good for you.
I actually really love teenagers. I loved teenagers. I represented juvenile delinquents and PINS clients, which are persons in need of supervision, and other children for over 20 years. That's what I did in my first career. I was an attorney for the child, and I just loved teenagers. Maybe that helps,
Yeah.
and maybe it helps doing parenting coordination, used to all kinds of conflict and family stress and from the family court system. But no, I feel very lucky. They're good kids and no complaints.
Beautiful, beautiful. And you're saying something that I knew, but wasn't front of mind, which is that you are not only a family law attorney and mediator, but that you actually represented children. So our listeners have heard from other attorneys for the children, Gales, guardian ad litems. And so that's great that you have that background, because as we dive into parenting coordinators, let's start with, so we have these experts, right? We've got the attorney for the children, we've got the custody evaluator if you're going to be evaluating, doing that psychological evaluation,
The
and
forensic you're talking about, yeah.
forensic evaluation, and then the parenting coordinator. So are there other people, like, to me, that always feels like the 3 key players on the team when there's custody conflict. Would you say there's any other players?
So each parent also has an attorney, and that can make a big difference who the attorney is. I do a small amount of direct representation of parents, not in the super high conflict divorces. My partners do the litigation. I do the out of court settlements, mediations, parenting coordination. I work with people to stay out of court, but the parents' lawyers are also a big part of what's going on.
Right, right. Of
And
course.
the parenting coordinator. The forensic has a snapshot, right? They do their part and maybe testify, hopefully not, because hopefully it gets settled after the forensic. And I guess the lawyers have their part and hopefully it gets settled. And the parenting coordinator has the most longevity because They work with parents before, during, and after the court
Okay,
part.
so I just wanted to set the stage.
Oh,
So
okay.
everyone has an attorney, but then when it comes to custody disputes, you've got the attorney for the children. I needed one. You have the custody evaluator who does the forensic evaluation. I had one of those. And then many people have this parenting coordinator that we're going to talk about today. And so for the custody part, those three are your key players, separate from the fact that everyone has an attorney. So Carolyn, let's start with what parenting coordinators do for a couple struggling with custody and what their background is. So what do they do?
So really anything to keep parents out of court, if possible, and anything to help them raise their children without having to go back to court or without bad things happening, I guess I should say. So as a PC, that's the short version of what we're called, I've done everything from parenting schedules, so big picture items, how they're going to see their kids and what the schedule is, help them settle, right, the whole piece of the custody, right, by talking them through the things they have to decide. I've done things like help plan bar and bat mitzvahs and birthday parties. I do a lot with planning on helping people choose schools for their children. Vaccines, there's a lot of decision making around vaccines, braces, mental health treatment. So any decision that parents have to make together per their agreement. The agreement or a court order is what dictates what a PC can do. And then there's lots of things that if they ask me that's not in their agreement, I'll help them. So basically my goal is really to just help them live their lives in as much like peace that is possible, given their obvious high conflict that's going on, or they wouldn't be with the parenting coordinator.
And what I'm hearing is that one can enlist a parenting coordinator, and we'll just call it PC from this point forward. So I can enlist a PC at any point during my divorce, and my divorce will probably inform whether or not I need that person post-divorce. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So actually, we work with couples before, during, and after divorce, right? I have a lot of couples who are not divorced yet. And I find myself begging the lawyers to settle the cases because it's very, very hard to get people to be co-parents and to put some of the animosity behind them when they're still in court. So those are in many ways the hardest cases. And then I have people who are 7 years post-divorce and they're still needing a parenting coordinator because they just still have not. It's a very small percentage of people who don't recover after the divorce, but there are people who need a PC for the life of their children's minority until the kids are 18.
Is it similar to going to a mediator when you go to a parenting coordinator, except they have a whole lot of experience with children and co-parenting?
Perfect question, because every PC has to be a mediator. It's like the only qualification, because what I describe is, okay, so the PC, first of all, it's lots of little mediations over the course of a longer period of time. A mediation, the way I look at it anyway, is you come to me, I mediate your divorce, your custody agreement. Usually it's more like a defined issue. But the real difference is a mediator doesn't give a recommendation, right? A mediator facilitates the conversation. A PC will give a recommendation, either binding or not binding, depending on what's in their agreement or their court order. Now, binding is never actually truly binding, right? Because I, as the PC, am not a judge. And you can never waive, even in your agreement, if you want to waive, you can never give up your right to go to court and ask a judge for his or her decision. So, but what the goal is let's just say they agree to a binding recommendation from the PC. The goal is that the parents will build some trust with the PC and, okay, so the binding recommendation is in his favor this time. She's not going to run to court because she thinks it'll maybe be in my favor next time. And you build a relationship over time, and it keeps both parents out of court, focused on their lives and their children, not spending money and not fueling the flames, working towards,
So if I sign an agreement that's binding, that means that at the end of this mediation, the end of this conversation, what you're suggesting should stand. And the only way it won't stand is if the other parent decides to go to court and say, I so disagree, I want the judge to make a decision.
Right. So the PC would do their own little, they talk to both parents. And the thing I try to do is get them to agree by having them talk to each other, which they don't usually do without a PC.
Right.
I also get information from, we call them collaterals, some from necessary third parties. If it's a medical decision, I always talk to the pediatrician. If it's a psychological decision, it's the therapist. School decision, I work with an educational consultant. So if I can't get them to agree, I have to choose between one parent and the other parent. Like I can't make my own decision based on what I think is best, right? It's either one parent or the other parent. And then I make what's called a binding recommendation. And then yes, they have to accept it unless one of them goes to court.
So that's written into the agreement. So you have agreements where there is no binding recommendation and others where there is a binding recommendation.
Right. And when I draft mediation agreements, settlement agreements, and I talk to the parents about having a PC in their agreement, I explain to them binding versus not binding. And what I say is not binding doesn't really leave you in a better place. The only thing not binding gives you is somebody to talk it through with you, which can be helpful. But if the PC spends time and your money talking it through, getting expert opinions, and then you still end up in the same place, you want X and your other parent wants Y, you're still in the same place. The PC can say, I think this parent has the right idea. I recommend what this parent wants, but the other parent goes, yeah, no, I still believe what I believe, and nothing happens. You have to go to court.
I'm hearing you say now, without a binding agreement,
recommendation,
binding recommendation, you're writing into your divorce settlement that you'll have a sounding board and someone to talk to together, but not that it's necessarily going to resolve the conflicts. And so, Carolyn, I think I had spoken to you about this offline. We specialize in high conflicts. So many of the listeners who come are the listeners who they're divorcing somebody who, for whatever reason, tends to be less flexible, less collaborative, less communicative, less even child-centric at times. In these cases, I'm hearing that it really makes sense to write in the binding recommendation.
So when I'm mediating agreements, I always tell the parents that if they could do it however they want. I'm a mediator giving information, not advice, right? So, and I don't give a recommendation, even just information. But I say, this is what happens. If it's not binding, you're not in any different place than you were before. If it's binding, at least the goal is building trust over time so that you accept what the PC says, that you pick the PC as somebody you want to build a relationship with in good faith. And again, I specialize in high conflict people too. Those are the ones that generally use a PC, although not always. And I've done a pretty good job with some of my really high conflict people building some trust so that there is an acceptance, even if it's not in their favor. Because sometimes it is in their favor.
Can you share, at the end of the day, stories go so much further than everything else. Can you share a story of relationship between the co-parents where between working with you and the binding agreement, something positive happened for the whole family?
So I had an agreement, a couple where there was a medical procedure that needed to be decided upon, 2 different medical procedures that were going to be able to be done at the same time if they were done. And I had to speak with a variety of medical providers. And then I facilitated a call between both parents and the medical provider. And then I also provided information I received from the different medical providers. And in the end, the information I was able to provide the parents, when we had a discussion, they ended up on the same page. So I was thrilled, right? So I didn't even have to make a recommendation. They came to the same decision in the end, which was what the doctors were recommending. And I was beyond thrilled. I don't like having that kind of pressure on me. It's not like something I love doing.
Right.
So that was one. I had another case where the parents were deciding between a gifted public kindergarten K through 12 and a private school K through 12, right? So two very good options. And the money wasn't an issue. When I worked with an educational consultant, and he came into the mediations and he met the child, and he was able to address the one parent that wanted the public kindergarten and say that he did not think that that school was going to be best for the child that is there today, for the 5-year-old child. And we don't know, maybe in 5 years, a different school, but right now he was able to explain. Now, I wasn't going to be able to give an opinion, right, on, so we brought an expert in, which is something that I do. Some of it is just really talking them through planning events, right? Because they can't talk to each other. So I felt good to be able to be part of a bat mitzvah, right? Like just to be able to have that for the child. Another thing I was able to facilitate, this one is going to be one of my favorite things forever, that one mom got to take her daughter to the Taylor Swift concert in France for Mother's Day. And I was able to help her figure out how to address her co-parent in a way where he agreed with my help. The way she drafted the email was in a way he really couldn't refuse. He didn't refuse. And that was like a lifetime event for
Oh
these
my
kids.
God.
So yeah,
Beautiful.
that's like one of the things that makes me feel this job is worthwhile whenever I have a day where I'm like, this is too hard.
Okay. Well, first of all, love those stories.
I got a picture that made me happy.
And there's a yin and a yang. And so let's balance that out with, can you tell one or two stories where you did everything that you could, but there was no agreement or it didn't work out? Like, I want to see what the other possibility is.
Well, in that same family with the Taylor Swift concert, I ended up getting fired, not because I didn't have a good relationship with both parents, but one of the parents said, it's not working because my co-parent is never going to co-parent with me. So why am I paying you? I'm not doing this anymore. Nothing against you. I was their third PC or fourth PC. Nothing against you. I actually had a good relationship with the high conflict parents, but this isn't working. The process isn't working. So that was one.
Can you speak because I think that that's the situation that I would love to hear more about. So you're saying, as a professional, I had a good relationship with the higher conflict person. So can you walk us through some of what happens in those situations? So it's not so much about you getting fired, but I think that so many of my clients are like, I'm going to invest this extra money and he or she is still going to be as intransigent as they always are. So let's just hear from you. What does that look like on your end? Are you looking for a way to make co-parenting easier? Talking Parents can help you streamline your shared parenting responsibilities and minimize conflict by keeping all interactions organized and documented. With Talking Parents, you can stop worrying about the he said, she said, and focus on what matters most, your children. Download the app in the Apple or Google Play Store and start a 30-day free trial today. Of course, your friends and loved ones care deeply about you, but if you're honest, all they mean, but if you're honest, all they mean, they just don't get it. And sometimes you leave those conversations feel, and sometimes you leave those conversations feel. If you're lonely and craving connection, if you're support and practical guidance, check out our high conflict divorce support group, where we gather regularly, facilitated by Karen McMahon. You will feel heard, seen, you will heard, and powerfully guided, and in the emotional and practical steps ahead. Go to JBD Divorce Support. Go to JBD/support.com DSG and register. And register. Divorce feels like an overwhelming, perfect storm as you navigate pain, fear, and confusion while struggling with unfamiliar legal procedures and the pressure to make complex decisions that will impact the rest of your life. Our free rapid relief call provides the clarity and confidence you're yearning for. Visit rapidreliefcall.com for support and guidance today.
Well, that was really heartbreaking because I feel like everything was going, right? And what I had been doing mostly was helping one parent figure out how best to manage communication to make life go forward, right? It wasn't even a great co-parenting situation, but I was mostly helping her manage
How to
the
communicate in a
communication.
way that was effective.
Right.
That
The
was
other parent wasn't using my services as much. I kind of still think I'm going to be back because we ended on good terms and they have stuff going on that I know about. So I don't think our relationship is over. I think it was more like, I
so.
need a break.
That's about you. I don't want to talk about. I
No,
want
I
to.
know it's hard to say what, because it's so sad. I don't know what's going to happen, right? Some people like it's just, that's what I'm saying. It's terrible to say, but you can't fix every problem. And that's, you can only, what I say to people is if something doesn't work, I try something else, right? And then if that doesn't work, I try something else. But at the end of the day, you can't make somebody do something they don't want to do. You can't make somebody be something he or she doesn't want to be. And that's very frustrating for a lot of people. So I do what I can do and I really put my heart and soul into it. So, I mean, that I guess is super disappointing to me because there were ways I was helping, even though he didn't see them or feel them, she did. So I guess I could say how to help that situation is you've got to put in your agreement that no one parent can unilaterally fire the PC.
If one parent doesn't want to see you or engage, they're, like you just said, they're actually not going to. So, okay, so if we have that as one extreme, so this is an example where you actually helped the family, the daughter got to have this incredible experience, and still we're going to say lesser conflict parent was so frustrated that she at least temporarily severed. What I would love to talk a little bit about expectations.
That's
So
a really good question.
yeah,
And
because and I just want to set the groundwork here for a second because I think you just said it so beautifully. One of the things I work with clients the most on is acceptance. She is who she is. He is who he is. You can yell, scream, kick, cry. They're going to still show up as they are. So that's the acceptance piece. So here we are post divorce. I know I had a hard time negotiating with this person. I know that they don't always put the child's needs first because they have their wounded ego or what have you. But that's okay because I'm going to hire a parenting coordinator and he or she is going to make everything work just great. Let's talk about realistic expectations.
so somebody once told me the story how a client said, but he doesn't do X, Y, and Z. And the lawyer says, did he do X, Y, and Z when you were married? And she says, no. And then the lawyer said, well, what makes you think he's going to do X, Y, and Z now? Right? Like people don't generally behave better when they're divorced sometimes, but it's generally you're more motivated to please your spouse or partner when you're still married, right? So that's one thing. And I said, I say to people, if I'm a litigator turned mediator. So I say, like, I have the tenacity and the creativity and like stubbornness of a litigator with the patience now of a mediator, right? Or a parenting coordinator. And it's been a good combination for me, served me well. So in my PC cases, if something doesn't work, I try something else. Some people don't want to meet together. I don't force them to meet together. I do a lot by email if we have to. I do some things by meeting separately, but I explain that it's not as effective. And I always encourage people to get to the point where they can meet together. So it's a lot of trial and error. But at the end of the day, and I have probably my hardest case ever right now in the PC world, in general, in life, my hardest set of circumstances ever. The end of the day, I can't make anybody do anything any more than even a judge can make somebody do something. So expectations have to be managed. I will try. I try so hard, right? I really do. And I try different things. But at the end of the day, as my mother always says, I'm responsible for your behavior. So-and-so's mother is responsible for his or her behavior. Or as you grow up, you're responsible for your own.
So If you were to say in a concise sentence your guidance regarding expectations, how would you state it?
I guess come in with hope, right? Because I always have hope. I'm always positive, and yeah, I think it doesn't pay to think the worst about everything in every situation. So come in ready to work hard and be positive, but in the back of your head, you have to know that I'm sure the divorce was hard, right? I'm sure the marriage was hard, and this could be hard too. And maybe celebrate the little things. So you said one sentence. I'm really not good with one sentence.
It's okay.
Celebrate.
I'm gonna right. And I'll actually, so what I'm hearing you say is come in with high hope, but realistic expectations. And a
Yes,
realistic expectation would be based on be in acceptance of how your ex has shown up during the lifetime that you've known them. And
right,
so if they've shown up a certain way and you expect to hire a PC and that they're going to miraculously get this individual to do what they have not done or behave in a way that they have not behaved, your expectations are unrealistic. So
right.
high hope, reasonable expectations, wrapped in acceptance is what I'm hearing.
Perfect. Perfect. I'm going to write that down and use it in my interviews with people. And I would say, make sure you interview your PC beforehand. I get so many cases where like, I get a call and they're in crisis and they're like, you're our PC. And I'm like, who are you? Because lawyers put me in the agreement without asking me, without the parents meeting me, which, okay, that's great.
Okay, so let's start this at the beginning then, right? So what I'm hearing you say now is if I'm in a high conflict situation, especially high conflict around custody and the kids and decision making, and I know that I'm going to need some assistance, and my attorney's saying, this happened to me. Let's throw a PC in there, and they throw a name in there. What I hear you saying is do your due diligence. This is someone you have to trust. This is someone that you want to meet with. Do you want to meet with the PC with your ex?
It's personal preference. Personal preference.
But
If
both of
you're
you should meet with that person and agree
100%.
that I like her. Okay, she'll be ours.
Right. Well, also, first of all, somebody's always the one that recommends you, right? Sometimes it's both lawyers, right? But it's always somebody's recommendation, right? So the other party's always skeptical, right, about the other lawyer's recommendation. So, of course, both parties have to meet and have to feel comfortable. And I always say, and if your spouse's lawyer wants to call me too, that's fine, right? If they don't know me and one spouse's lawyer does, but you need to feel comfortable, right? And it's not like you're hiring somebody to like be a math tutor for your kid. Like you're hiring somebody to work with you on like high conflict issues. Like you have to know that there's some kind of a connection there and that you're going to feel comfortable with this person. A lot of people ask me about my like protocol or my process, and I'm happy to go through that with them. Mostly I say like, I don't have a rigid process, right?
So let me ask you this, because everyone's not going to be going to you. So part of what I'm looking for is for you to give advice for no matter what PC they choose. So let's say at this part of the conversation, you're giving advice to somebody who's in a different part of the world than you work in, and they want to know, how do I vet a good PC? What are your top 3 to 5 questions that you would ask?
What's your background? Because there are mental health PCs and there are attorney PCs.
And we're going to get to that in a minute. That'll be my
Right.
next.
What's your background? What is your process, right? Because even though I don't have a single one, again, this is me. I will give a general overview of how I work because it needs to be something that works for you, right? For example, if you're refusing to meet with somebody in person, you need to make sure that the PC is okay with that. That's just one example. So you need to know about their process, how long they've been working in this area. I think because experience matters, right? I think those are, and honestly, it's just like have a conversation with them about this is my situation and ask them about themselves, right? And as you're having the conversation, you'll know, like, does it flow? Do you feel like you can ask this person a question? Do they seem like there's somebody that you could connect with? Right. That's the kind of thing that you really need to talk to them to determine.
Right. Beautiful. So if I'm sitting with somebody and I feel heard and I feel seen and I'm listening to their background and that's comforting to me and they're giving me the time and space to thoroughly answer my questions, that's that feels good. And so you really want to use your own discernment in determining, is this a good fit for me? And then, of course,
100%.
how would you, just to wrap this part up in a bow, so mom meets you, you seem terrific, or whatever, whoever the PC is seems terrific. And then the other parent, mom or dad, they meet you. And do you ever have a situation where like they just can't decide on anyone because they can't decide on anything?
Sometimes they do, and like if it's in court, each party will give one name and then the judge will decide, or each party gives two names and the judge picks out of a hat, or they pick one name, the judge picks, and then the other party's name is second, because sometimes people are not available to take on new cases right at that moment, or in a year when you finally need the PC. And I always tell people, like, if you're going to pick me, my one thing I really like to do is meet people before there's a crisis, because I like to do a long interview with each person separately. I like to hear everything without you having to say, I don't want to speak badly about the other person. Like, I want to hear it all, because it helps me figure out a way forward by really hearing all like the everything you want to say without that other person there. And then when you have a crisis, I'm not like, who are these people? What is their story? What do I need to do? And I'm not rushing. I got a call once, like I was traveling for Thanksgiving and you're our PC and we don't know when our kid is flying home. And I was like about to catch a plane. So I don't want that circumstance, because I'm gonna want to help you.
Okay, let's go back to that piece, which I think is so important. And I'm so curious your take on this. So you're an attorney, so you're coming at your work as a PC with an incredible understanding of their legal rights and the legalities. And then somebody else doesn't have that depth of experience in legal because they're a mental health expert and they understand the psychology and what have you. How does one choose?
So I think it's more about finding the person that you feel the most comfortable with. I think there's some cases that may be better for mental health and some that may be better for a lawyer, but I think it's more about the individual person and their experience, right? So I spent 24 years in family court. So I'm extremely comfortable around mental health issues and diagnoses and treatment. And on a personal note, I have a mom who's a psychologist, a sister who's a psychiatrist, and another sister who's a special ed social worker. I also was the training coordinator at my job for 8 years or 10 years. So I brought in mental health people to do the training. We had training all the time. I put doctors on the stand and psychologists. I was a litigator. So my understanding and familiarity and comfort level with psychological aspects of this practice is very high.
So before you go on, though, I want to ask you, that's you.
Again, but that's what I'm
So,
saying.
but I want to say to you, this is the question. So I love that you have an incredible background. I'm so glad we're chatting. What happens when you know that your spouse has a disorder? It's just so clear that there's nothing normal about the way that they respond to things. And I would hire you, even though you're not a mental health expert, because of the depth of experience you just described. But can you talk about hiring the attorney, the person with the legal background, when you have something that is so complex when it comes to the mental health part?
That's why the interview process is important, right? So somebody who interviews me, I'm going to tell them about my background, right? And they're going to say, my husband has undiagnosed, I hear this all the time, right? How would you handle that? That's why you interview separately in that case, right? So that's what you're asking. You're asking, are you comfortable with this case? I once in 4.5 years have said, I really think you should have a mental health expert once. But I'm going to say it, right? And, the lawyers, right? We read contracts, like we read the agreements, everything's based on the agreement. But if you're a mental health professional, you might say, you know what, I'm going to call the lawyer if I am not sure how to, but they're also getting really good at reading these agreements. And we have a community. I have a peer group of PCs that we meet monthly, right? My two partners are PCs. I consult all the time. These are such hard cases. My partner and I talk about our cases on a regular basis. We share an office so that we can have full access to each other. I consult about how to interpret an agreement all the time with other lawyers, right? And I have close friends who are mental health PCs. So I'll help interpret a contract and I'll ask her opinion on so you just, I guess, want to find somebody that you trust, you feel comfortable with, right? So you think that you're in good hands, right? And then
And I want to summarize this as you've just shifted my perspective. So I appreciate that. So I've always had a really strong perspective that for so many of my clients, they really want someone with a mental health background because they're dealing with something that's so not understood by people who don't have that background. But your situation is exceptional because of the depth of your experience. And I just want to reflect back to the listener that when you're choosing, unlike my previous perspective, which is I can only do A, it really makes sense to take the time and energy to meet with and speak to people so that you're not only getting the background you desire, but the right person who's going to understand you best. And so I love that. Carolyn, I want to pivot for a second. One of the things you said earlier is you're the expert who they're with for a longer period of time. So should it work out once they hire you, you could be engaging with this couple over the course of months or years until their child is emancipated. Can you talk about in those situations where you have more than a one and done, where you have what are the benefits of let's talk about the benefits for the parents, the benefits for the kids, the family, when there's an effective parent coordinator involved?
So I think the most important thing is you start to build the trust, right? The trust so that when you speak freely and or give advice and or make a recommendation, the parents accept, right? You build that trust and you have the history, right? And sometimes you will agree with one parent, sometimes the other parent, and they know that, right? So they are more accepting of the things that you might be doing on their behalf, like the recommendations you're making. And that history about you'll be able to say, oh, don't you remember when this happened last time? I gave the recommendation that was in your favor. So stop telling me that I'm biased. Oh, you get called biased a lot. That means we say that means you're doing your job because the other one will call you biased in another few months. Like it's just part of the nature of
So the parents build trust in you, and that gives them more, what was the word? Like almost elasticity to stick with the process because they're seeing that you know them, you know the situation, you're fair in terms of decisions. What besides trust is the benefit?
So I think also if they see any improvement, if their life gets better in any way, like I love the words protocols and proposals in both my mediation and my PC. Parent will say, he's emailing me, blah, blah, blah. And give me a proposal on how you'd like to change the email protocol, right? What's your proposal? I propose that we email only once a day and that the topic sentence says X. And I propose that you have to answer the email in 72 hours. And then I might say to the other parent, can you give a counter proposal? And then when we're done, I will write a new protocol. And that works wonders. And then they see.
I love that.
My protocol and proposals, my favorite words. So I do a lot of that. And then they're like, wow, things are a little calmer. So then they'll come to me and say, can we do a protocol for exchanges? And I'll say, sure, give me a proposal. And I'll say the other one, here's her proposal. Can you give me a counter proposal? So any progress starts to make them invest, right? They become more invested in the process.
Right.
It's also, there's some I guess we call it like bearing witness, right? You're not alone.
Yes.
Right? You're not alone and you're not with just your girlfriend or your mother, who's always going to take your side. You're with somebody who actually knows the other person, knows the circumstances, and can be there as an active listener. And I'm not going to like agree if they're wrong. But they have somebody who's there with them, right?
Objective, non-judgmental, active listener, partner in the whole mess that they're in. Completely love that. Yeah.
So that's
Okay.
effective.
And what's the benefit to the kids?
So I always say to parents, I miss working with kids. I did it for 21 years. And I don't like to bring kids into the process because they should be living their lives. But if I do feel that it's important for me to meet a child, that's sort of my secret superpower, because I did it tens of thousands of kids who were abused and neglected and in crisis and trauma. And like, I really know how to do it, right? And do it so that the kids are not coached, they're not traumatized, or I know if they're coached. I do it very rarely because I don't believe that kids should be part of the process. If a kid has a therapist, I will speak to a therapist if it's appropriate. If they have an AFC, I'll speak with the AFC if it's appropriate. So I have a lot of conversations with the parents about the kids. I help the parents make decisions about the kids. I'll talk to collaterals about the kids. I only bring them in the process if it's really necessary. And occasionally a child who knows too much will ask to see me, and then I usually will do that. I think this is an ever-growing process, right? From even when I started 4 years ago, it's really evolved and grown. Judges are using it more, lawyers are using it more, and sometimes it's such a hard population of people struggling so much, so that if the lawyers can segment some of the day-to-day struggles to PC, they can focus more on getting the legal stuff done. Judges don't have time or energy. Their courts are so backed up to deal with the day-to-day stuff. So I think it's been a really, really good that it's been expanded so widely in the legal community. There are a lot more lawyers than there used to be that are PCs, and people are utilizing it a lot more. And I think it's like a great development in the family law community. I really do.
Would you say, because I think this is so interesting. I do parenting plans with my client, but I work with one client, and there's so much back and forth. I have a couple of clients right now, so much back and forth with their attorneys because of the difficulty of the other person being inflexible or not really putting the kid first. I mean, my takeaway from this is if you're in a high conflict situation and you know you're going to be wrangling with your spouse, your soon to be ex for the rest of until your children are emancipated, find and use a PC early and often so it's kind of like if you have a divorce coach, a PC, a matrimonial attorney, and you've got high conflict, that's really greasing things. That's really allowing for that smooth moving forward. And I don't know that I've actually ever thought about it, Carolyn, that way. I think I know people have used PCs during the process. I think I've always thought of it more as your post-divorce key person to stay out of court. But you're really saying right from the beginning.
Yeah.
Right from the
I
beginning.
have a case now. I'm working with a family systems therapist who's wonderful. I'm learning so much from working with her. She and I are working closely together. The progress this family has made is immense on the resist refuse potential issue. And we've worked so closely with the lawyers because the case was like on the verge of trial. And all of us worked so closely together. And Randy Heller is the family systems therapist, and she and I want to sort of do a presentation on this because, and actually one of the parents has a parenting coach as well, and the child has a therapist and a developmental pediatrician, and we've all been working to support this family. And for a while I was like, oh my God, if this doesn't work even after all of this, but now we're seeing so much progress, and I think we're going to avert like a trial, and it's just so amazing to see. But it took all of these professionals, and I've been the PC for a year now, and then we added the family systems therapist about 4 months ago at my request, and the moms had the parenting coach for about 6 months. The child's had a therapist for 6-8 months. It's a lot, but if the success keeps them from trial, then it's worth everything.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm
This kid I haven't met. I want to meet this kid. but
Yeah.
he's met his people. I'm not one of his people. I shouldn't be.
Yeah. How can our listeners find you?
My email's probably the best way. And then I send a link. I do no fee consultations. 'Cause like I said, don't want someone to hire me without talking to me and making sure we're a good fit. I think you have my email to put in the bio, or should I say
Yeah.
it?
You can, so what is your website?
It's DFK. Actually, well, we have a new partner, but right now it's DFK, Diamond Fee and Kalos. So DFKFamilyLaw.com. And I'm C Kalos, KALOS, at DFKFamilyLaw.com.
And that is in the show notes, folks, but I just wanted you to say that out loud. And then you also have a gift for our listeners.
Yes, I did put together everything you could want to know about parenting coordination.
And what you'll find in the show notes, folks, is the website, Carolyn's email address, and a hyperlink to the gift, which is a beautiful PDF that describes a lot of what we talked about, what a parent coordinator is, what their responsibilities are, what the benefits of working with one is. And my last question to you is, are you limited to working within the New York City area or the New York State area?
There's no direct licensing for parenting coordination. So no, I can work on parenting plans and parenting issues on Zoom anywhere. I can only draft in New York. I'm only licensed in New York. So I can only draft a parenting agreement, settlement agreement. I could do an unofficial parenting plan, but if they wanted it so ordered or in their state form, I couldn't do that.
Yeah, so if you really have just loved, as I have, Carolyn and her heart and her experience and everything that she shared, no matter where you are in the country, you could actually reach out and have a conversation with her. If you were to hire a PC with a mental health background, they wouldn't be able to draft your settlement either. And so you can go to her, you can work with her, and then you can always go to your attorney to craft it into legalese. And so I really encourage you to grab that gift, which is brilliant. I've already seen it, and reach out and touch base with Carolyn if that sounds like something that would be helpful for you. Carolyn, thank you so much for coming. I'm so glad we connected. I'm so glad to have had you chat with the listeners and share so many positive things about enlisting a PC when needed.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And we'll be back real soon. You take care. Thanks for joining us on the Journey Beyond Divorce podcast. I hope you found guidance and encouragement to help you along your journey. If you like my podcast, please take a minute to subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. You can also visit us at jbddivorcesupport.com, where our team of coaches support both men and women through our one-on-one coaching, group programs, online courses, and free resources. Stay tuned for our next episode, and I'll talk to you soon.